Okay, so thank you all for joining us. Welcome to the Career Insights and Advice panel, co-hosted by LISSA and SCARLA. My name is Kayla. I'm the current president of LISSA, which is our Library Information Science Student Association, kind of a tongue twister. And we're also joined by Adriana, the president of SCARLA tonight. We have several of our executive board members from both groups present, as well as our faculty advisor, Nancy, who I'm sure everyone here already knows, all of us students, but in case you haven't, um, we're really happy that Nancy was able to join us for this. Um, I will turn things over to Adriana quickly, just if you wanted to introduce Scarla or say anything about that.
Yes, hello. So I'm president of SCARLA, and this is another tongue twister. We're the Student College Academic and Research Libraries Association here at Rutgers. Um, but yeah, so we're super happy to have everyone here to talk to us today. And also from SCARLA, we have Emily Evans, our webmaster, I see, and Cassandra, one of our members at large. So yeah, happy to be here.
Awesome. So the goal of tonight is to hear from a variety of people in the library information science and adjacent fields and really get a chance to hear about their careers, their perspectives, what we could be doing, what we're trying to get ourselves ready to launch our careers, the hiring process, basically, how can we position ourselves for the jobs that we want? Uh, so I will do a brief introduction of our speakers and their amazing qualifications. So we have Erin Ackerman, and she is actually a Rutgers alum. She serves as the interim director of the R. Barbara Gittenstein Library at the College of New Jersey, where she previously held the positions of Assistant Director for Public Services and Social Sciences Librarian. Um, Erin has a PhD in political science from the Johns Hopkins University and has taught as an adjunct professor at TCNJ in their Department of Political Science. Her research and teaching interests include collection management, research training and strategies of early career academic librarians, American law and politics, gender and politics, and information literacy in the social sciences. Her research has been published in several academic journals, including the Journal of Academic Librarianship and Law and Society Review. She's also the author of a chapter in They Say/I Say on writing in the social sciences and is active in ACRL and has served as the chair of ACRL's politics, policy, and international relations section. And Erin, if you want to just like wave at everyone so they can see where you are on the video, thank you. We're really happy that you're able to join us. So, think about Erin's background as we're considering questions. Um, we're also joined tonight by Michelle, and she is the archives director for the Dominican Sisters of Peace. She has previously worked in academic, museum, corporate, and private archives. Michelle has been a mentor for over 15 years, serving on the mentoring committee twice, as well as participating in the cohort mentoring program. She also does one-off mentoring for anyone who asks and offers advice and support to archivists on listservs and in social media groups. So everyone pay attention. Michelle has served in section leadership roles in the accessibility and disability section, the independent archivist section, and the loan arranger section. She has also served on several section steering committees and appointed task forces. Admitting another person to the waiting room, sorry, as I do this simultaneously. She was part of the working group who first developed the best practices for working with archives researchers with physical disabilities in 2008. She has spoken about DEI for most of her career and works to support others who speak on this topic. Michelle regularly speaks to students in classes and symposia and through keynote presentations, and she was the recipient of the 2020 Spotlight Award and subject of a 2020 Council resolution honoring the Accessibility and Disability Section Steering Committee. Michelle has spoken on numerous SAA panels, taught workshops, webinars, and has been published many times. She got her MLIS from the University of Arizona in 2006 and her archival certification in 2008 and her bachelor's in medieval literature from the Ohio State University in 2003. That is so fun. I love that. And Michelle, I guess she's been reacting, but if you want to just give a wave so everyone can see where you are on the screen, thank you again for joining us. And our next panelist is a you know qualified in her own right, but also a friend of mine. So I'm very excited for Kelly Back to be joining us. She is the Associate Director of Talent Acquisition at the New York Public Library, where she has spent the past 3 years leading hiring efforts across nearly the entire organization. She partners with teams across branch libraries, research libraries, and administrative departments to recruit talent ranging from librarians and curators to operational and strategic leadership roles. Before joining NYPL, Kelly led recruitment initiatives in the education sector, supporting hiring across multiple charter school networks in New York City. Earlier in her career, she was a fourth grade math and science teacher in Houston, Texas through Teach for America. And I applaud that because I'm very bad at both math and science, so I can't even teach it to anybody, let alone myself. Across each chapter of her career, Kelly, from the classroom to the system-wide hiring strategy, Kelly's work has been grounded in expanding access and advancing equity to better serve communities. She is passionate about helping others, navigating their own career paths, and making meaningful impact through their work. So thank you so much, Kelly, for helping everyone here tonight with your advice and insight. And then our final, oh, sorry, Kelly, you can wave at everyone too, so everyone sees where Kelly is on the screen. Okay. And now our final panelist, Kayo Denda. She is the head of the Marjorie Somers Foster Center and librarian for Women's Gender and Sexuality Studies at Rutgers Libraries. She is the liaison librarian to the Women's and Gender Studies Department, Institute for Women's Leadership, Institute for Research on Women, and Douglas Residential College. She had worked over the years identifying and providing digital access to unique collections, such as the award-winning Center for Women's Global Leadership poster collection, the Women Education and Leadership at Rutgers, a portal of interviews that document the history of women, education, and leadership at Rutgers. Her publications include the co-authored monograph Douglas Century, Transformation of the Women's College at Rutgers University, among others. She is the recipient of the Smithsonian Fellowship in Museum Practice at the Smithsonian Center for Learning and Digital Access, the Career Achievement and Significant Achievement Awards in Women's Studies Librarianship from the American Library Association, Association of College and Research Libraries, my goodness, and the Douglas Medal from the Associate Alumni of Douglas College. Raised and educated in Brazil, she holds both an MLS and an MA degree from Rutgers University. So another Rutgers alum, which we're so excited to have to see like the many different paths many of our students have gone. So Kaya, if you just want to like wave, everyone can see where you are on screen. So now we all know who we're talking to. So again, thank you everyone so much for being here. For this next sort of portion, we put together a list of questions for our panelists. And, if you have an answer to them, amazing. We didn't sort of, if you don't have an answer, you don't want to speak on any specific topic, that's okay. That's why there's four of you. And we, of course, are going to open it up to audience questions as well. So if there's something that's like a burning question, feel free to drop it in the chat. And, feel free to react in the chat as well as we're going through this. So I will finally stop talking and ask our first questions, which I sort of separated out. The first portion being hiring and job searching, and the second half being more related to career and professional development. So our first question is, what skills are becoming more important for new professionals?
I can kick us off if folks don't mind. So I would say for new professionals in general, not just kind of in the library science background, I would just say holistically what I'm seeing across the board that all of our hiring managers are looking for are two things, and they seem like kind of on opposite ends of the spectrum. So just bear with me here. But I know it's a daunting thing to say, but AI is here, right? And I know that understandably so, a lot of people are concerned about what that might bring to their jobs, to their industries, whatever, right? But I think what I'm seeing across the board is that hiring managers are looking for people who are cautiously optimistic and are open to seeing how they can integrate that technology into their work. So whether that means like optimizing workflows or systematizing things in better ways, that's one thing, right? And then on the other opposite end of the spectrum, because AI is becoming so prevalent and tech is becoming so prevalent, the people skills are even more important today than they ever were because a lot of things that are kind of more STEM focused, something like computer programming, um, is much easier to do now in the world of AI, right? And so what people are finding is that like actually a background in the humanities, being able to communicate effectively with people, having strong customer service skills are actually becoming way, way, way more important today than it ever was previously. So again, those both of those things are important, right? But they're important in tandem together, right? Because tech is evolving so quickly, what brings value to you as someone in the workforce? And what I'm seeing more than ever before is the human element of it and how you communicate and work well with other people. So just a little tidbit just across the board of what I'm seeing.
Yeah, and I want to thank Kelly for naming AI right out of the gates, because that's something in the college academic setting that we're grappling with, and we feel like I think I speak for myself, my fellow librarians, faculty, like we're all sort of like it feels like it's already happening, and we're playing catch up, right? So I think having a sense like exploring AI, understanding what it is, understanding how students might be using it or what they're talking about in high schools around this, and really thinking for the college university setting, thinking about workflows and like in what ways you could use AI responsibly in your library work. Um, but also thinking about particularly how do we grapple with AI in the context of teaching and research. So how are you going to work with students? How are you going to help faculty think about AI? And at core, I feel like AI, the demand for librarians around AI is what it's always been for librarians, which is critical evaluation of information. How do we do it in this new setting? So being able to talk to that, not even necessarily having mastery of it, but having some familiarity, having some things like I'm excited about trying this. So like I said, that cautious optimism, the things I want to grapple with for the things that you're not optimistic about. So I think being able to talk to that, I do think, in terms of the academic setting, I don't know if it's necessarily that it's becoming more important, but certainly in the context of the current economic climate for colleges and universities, the demographic enrollment cliff, being able to think about how you as a librarian are being able to articulate not just how libraries generally, but how you as a librarian bring value to the college, how you support student success. And it doesn't have to be in terms of direct interaction with student, but if you're a cataloger, you've got to be able to talk about the way in which your work helps students find things, and just being able to speak to the mission of the college or university, right, just right on that first interaction.
I couldn't agree. Can I go next? Yeah. So I couldn't agree more with the previous speakers. I think AI, there's a lot of anxiety around AI. I do feel, in my case, more anxiety in the library system rather than among the faculty members, because the students are using AI in one way or another. And so I personally feel that our role, as the previous speaker, Erin, mentioned, is really to think critically about the tool because they are tools in reality. And if it's something that benefits us, we should use it and then think about it in what ways we could put in practice. And I attended a very interesting presentation by one of my colleagues, a cataloger, and she actually created a way to use Google Gemini to help her in converting the transliteration of Wei Giles, which is an older transliteration form of Chinese, to the new one. I mean, before this, it took ages to do because it had to be done manually. But now she trained the Gemini to be responsive to her request. And I think, I don't know exactly how she did that, but she published a paper, and I'll find it and I'll put it in the chat here. But I think that's one example of how one can take advantage of the technology and do things more quickly and more efficiently than before. And along the lines of what Kelly mentioned, I think in terms of personal, I guess, a social skill, it's actually social intelligence, I think the bottom line is. But I think the capability to sort of read the situation and react is really so very important now that any library around the Northeast here, especially, the diversity of population is just enormous. And maybe I'm more sensitive to that because I myself am an immigrant, and when I first came to this country, which is many decades ago, I spoke very little English. So I learned the English basically living by learning by living, basically. So I think that even in universities, we have a lot of international students, and certainly libraries like ours have a lot of local people that come to use, and their ability to express in English language is limited. They might have a lot of accents, and I think we have to be to acquire enough skills to communicate with these people, our users, more effectively and kindly, so that we can address their needs.
Everything everyone just said, plus, um, on the archive side of thing, I do think that there are a few skills that you actually need to be able to do. So, like, the one thing that's weird about archives is you go from being a student, and in many cases, you will be the director of the archives. I went from being a student to being the director of archives at the Abraham Lincoln Library and Museum, which included Lincoln materials. And all of a sudden, I was in charge of all of these things and these huge budgets and all of this stuff. So, one of the things that is, I wish I had really thought about more is things like how do you manage a budget? And, how do you manage a budget? Like, I'm going to be honest with you, the budget I had was $5,000 a year. It was an enormous archive that required thousands and thousands of dollars, and it was a very small amount of money. And we didn't have a lot of grant writing abilities, which is also something you should be able to do if you know how to, if you at least understand how grants work. And start with small ones. NEH grants are huge, and people are paid just to write those. But there's a lot of really small grants that are great for archives. And I think they apply for libraries as well. And so if you have a little knowledge of grant writing, if you have a little knowledge of how to do budgets, archivists wear a lot of different hats. We do donor relations, we do budgeting, we do cataloging. So the more little things you know how to do, the better. And I like to tell people we don't need to know how to do everything perfectly, and we don't need to have it all in our heads, but I need to know enough that I understand what's happening and where to go to get the expert help that I do actually need. So for archives, it's kind of really important that you know a lot of things, but the one skill that we all absolutely need to know that is a very old skill is the reference interview. It is the number one thing that I use as an archivist every day. Because the first time someone came to me and said, "Tell me everything you know about Abraham Lincoln," I laughed and said, "You don't actually want to know that." And 20 minutes of reference interview later, we found out he wanted to know what the name of Lincoln's dog was, which was fine. It was very easy to answer and wasn't 50,000 pages of material. So reference interviews are really important, and sort of knowing how to do a lot of different things. And again, like everybody's been saying here, people skills. And I know we have a lot of time, a lot of questions left, but with AI and archives, it's great for transcriptions, for editing photos, and for using for accessibility purposes. It's wonderful for that. For a lot of other archival work, it's not great yet. But we're like everybody else, we're sort of playing with it and figuring out how it's gonna work. It's gonna be a tool like everything else that we use. I mean, we still use microfilm, so it's not gonna go anywhere.
I think, building on all those amazing skills that everyone here just listed, our sort of next question was tough job market. There's a lot of us aspiring professionals in this very underfunded field. What makes resume stand out in the hiring process? And that answer might be different for each and every one of us in this room based on what we're looking for. But if you have, a specific tidbit that you wanted to share.
So for us, we're looking for a great resume or CV. We're looking for things on the resume that relate to the job, and specifically the job responsibilities and the job description. We're looking for library experience, or we're looking for how you frame non-library experiences to speak to what you have to do in the libraries. One of the things I do emphasize, however, is that it's not just the resume or CV for academic library jobs. It's really the cover letter. The cover letter, is and how you take the opportunity in the cover letter to say, here's this thing you're looking for that I'm excited about doing, and here's the experience I have that speaks to this or that will allow me to approach this or do this. And we're always really looking for that connection, and also what is it about the specific job that or the specific institution that you're excited about. And like, I actually hate this question, like, why do you want to work here? Well, because I want a job and I want to be able to afford rent, right? But the question should really be, what is it in this job that you're going to be excited about doing? And so if you can talk about that, or what is it about the way that we do librarianship that you want to be part of, then those are things that we're looking for.
Sorry. I agree with Erin that the cover letter is very important. And I only learned that after I came into my job. And basically, the cover letters are places where you can talk about things that has no space in the CV. And I would say that you probably don't need to stick to one page resume anymore. I think you are at the point where you can really do the CV with several pages. And so, for example, in my case, I was a returning student and I had never worked in this country, and it would be my first job, if you will. And I started working very part-time at a public library near New Brunswick. So, and the reason for that is because I was home with my two kids. But you don't write that I was home with two kids in your resume, in your CV, but you can write this type of thing in your cover letter so that the reader, the person trying to hire you, can actually have an idea why you finished your degree in such a date, and you have like a 15-year gap until you undertook until this point when you're looking for a job. So I think cover letters and CVs work hand in hand. The other thing I wanted to mention, because I was talking with this issue with a colleague, a young colleague that works for me. So this person at one point in life, I think she was interested in a job in the archive. So she created the Gmail that had this term archive and maybe initials of her name. That would be, I think, would be fine if she were to be applying for an archival job. But for any other job, I think it kind of makes the reader question, why is she using this archive Gmail? And you're looking for, I don't know, children's librarian in my library. So I think you probably have to try to be as neutral as possible. And even like the format of the CV, I've seen CVs that are very jazzy with interesting designs and such. I would like to say that I feel more comfortable looking at CVs that are very plain, just a Microsoft document. It might be just me, but I think you don't want the reader, the hiring committee, the search committee to sort of start making judgments about you, the candidate, and I think a plain document might actually avoid questions or speculations and such.
I like to see a little section on your CV that says skills, and I
Mhm.
want to see I am an expert at Past Perfect. I am competent in Content DM. I am familiar with archive space. It shows me here's the stuff I
Yeah.
know, and more importantly, it shows me that you understand how a lot of these systems work. So if I have one that you've never seen before, I know you're going to pick it up
Mhm.
quickly. And the other thing I like to see is links to things. So if you wrote an article, please link to it in your CV so that I don't have to hunt it out. I know it's on your LinkedIn page, but if I'm looking at 50 today, I don't have time to go look at your LinkedIn page and try to hunt it out.
Right. Right.
If you did a finding aid, link to it. Whatever you could sort of link to in your job, especially if it's like a skill that you know they need for this job that you're applying for, absolutely put it in there. And then in cover letters, I am a huge fan of a bulleted list that is a one-to-one comparison of all the things they put in the job posting that says, we need you to have 3 years of experience with past perfect. You said, I have 3 years of experience with past perfect. When it's in a list, it allows it to instantly pop off the page. So
Right.
with archives jobs, unfortunately, one position will have a couple hundred people who apply. I mean, sometimes there will only be two people apply, which is great. You got a 50-50 chance. But if it's 200 people, we need to make sure that your cover letter stands out from the crowd. And if I can see you have all of the skills that I am looking for, I'm going to put you on at least the main
Right.
file. Right. And so that's sort of where you want to get to. You want your CV, your cover letter, your resume to show the greatest things about you as close to the top as possible. So like if once you have more experience, your education is going to fall further down. It's the least interesting thing about you. And sort of what are your skills? What are the presentations you've done? What are the publications you've done? Those become more important as they sort of move up on the CV.
I don't know, Michelle, you mentioned the matching, right, of the skills posted in the cover letter and CV. I've heard instances when if you don't use the terms in the job ad, uh, if the CVs are sorted by AI, we're talking about AI, some kind of a automated system, actually if you don't use the terms in the posting, your CV will not really be selected. Have you heard of something like that?
I have too. I always tell
Mhm.
people use the same language.
Yeah,
If
yeah,
they call them patrons, you call them
right,
patrons.
right.
Always try to match that. I mean, I didn't think about the AI angle, but for me, it was more of a psychological thing. Yeah,
Mhm.
you're already speaking their language, but absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing too. If you have to fill out a system online,
Hmm.
don't
Hmm.
ever say see resume. Fill the thing out.
Yeah.
Don't skip any questions. If you skip a question, the system's going to automatically bounce you out.
Yeah, I also like a lot of the places ask for references, and some candidates say references needed. They don't list the names of people, and I think it's better to list the names of people because the search committee may be friendly with somebody that is listed on that document, and there's a whole personal network. I think it's better to have everything in the document than the search committee having to go someplace else and look for it.
I'll be super quick here because I know we have other questions, but I agree with what all our panelists just shared. I think one thing I do want to emphasize a little bit more was Erin's point about ensuring that your application as a whole is as aligned to the job description as possible, right? Like we don't want you to make stuff up, right? Like we're not telling you to lie about your experience, but like if you took a class and if you wrote a paper, whatever it might be that is specifically aligned to being asked in the job, responsibilities or the skills, speak to it in your resume, speak to it in your cover letter, right? What I find happens a lot, and look, my team, we see thousands of resumes a day, right? For our branch libraries, our research libraries, and our collections team. And time again, I think what we find to be an error that in a lot of applications is that people kind of try to put everything in their materials, and there isn't, to Michelle's point, and isn't a clear um there isn't a clear prioritization of that work, right? So let's say your most recent experience is that you're a waiter somewhere. Yes, that is important, right? But if you're applying for like an archivist position, that maybe shouldn't be the first thing on your resume, right? Maybe you can totally rework things in terms of timeline to make sure that whoever has eyes on your materials can see first and foremost what is the highest priority and most aligned to the position,
Mhm.
right? So that's one thing I'll say. I think the second thing I'll say to Erin's point again, when it comes to the cover letter, I will say actually at NYPL, we don't require cover letters. Though I will say that what we found time and time again is that our hiring managers on the research and collection side of things do look to the cover letters definitely, right? And so like if you don't include it, what we always tell our hiring managers, we shouldn't hold it against someone. But if you do include a cover letter, you can speak to what everyone was saying to so much more that you cannot speak to in a CV or resume, right? And I know that like at NYPL, we're a very, very large institution, but wanting to work as an archivist at the Stephen A. Schwarzman building in, let's say, our maps division is very, very different than wanting to work as an archivist at our Schomburg Center for Research in Black Culture. And your cover letter should specifically stand out as to why you want to work at those teams, in those departments, in those divisions. And it shouldn't be kind of these generalities. Our hiring managers are really looking to see like, why do you want to work in an institution about Black diaspora? And if you cannot even speak to that in your cover letter, that already puts you a peg down from other people who are able to speak to that in their materials. So I think speaking to those pieces are really, really important wherever you can.
I'll just make a very quick plug for something I found really helpful early in my career, and I was a career changer. Is go when I was at ACRL and when I was at other library conferences, if they offered a resume review session, a lot of times conferences will do that. It's a great thing for student organizations to do. Like, I'll come back and review resumes. Just hearing from different people how they're seeing the resume when they look at it doesn't necessarily mean you need to change it, based on what one person says, but it gives you a sense of like, how is someone else reading this? So those are really great opportunities to take advantage of.
That is a really good idea. We have conference season coming up. Everyone should be aware of those and be registering for them, especially if you're a student member of LISSA or SCARLA. We often get a student discount. So there's ways to make attending those a little bit more accessible. And I believe some of them even offer scholarships. So it's always worth looking into. So I'll do one more question from our sort of like skills-based area. And, let's say we've gotten past the resume review stage and we're being interviewed. What generally differentiates a candidate who gets hired for the role from those who, had that interview, they thought it went well, but they were passed on?
I think I think hiring is one of the most difficult things to do. And I'm not only talking about library hires, but even selecting people to join the sports team or something. You really, it's really a balance, right? So you know what you need, and I think primarily is a person who can fulfill the needs that you have. But there are also other aspects, personal things, or the kind of person that you want. And those things are things that it's hard to see on the CV or in the cover letter. And I think in our case, we select, say, the finalists. That can be like from 3 to 6 people, and we bring them on campus for uh, opportunities for them to meet with a bunch of people. And then the selection is made. And it's basically personal skills, people that are aware of the culture of the institution, the kind of person they need to join the team. So it boils down to sort of personal traits of the individual. But I think that's the same for the candidates too, right? They may be offered the job, but they have to like the position in order to be successful.
In archives, subject specialty will usually be the thing that gets you the job over somebody else. So like if you have an architecture background, you are much more likely to be hired as the architecture archivist over
Mhm.
someone like me with a medieval literature background. Um it doesn't have the same, skill set. I think it's akin to like if you want to be a law librarian, having a JD is a requirement in order to be able to do it. So it's sort of that way for archives too. Just sort of having either a little bit more knowledge in one specific area or not needing to be trained up on specific software. So if they use Content DM and you are already an expert in Content DM, you're going to get the job over someone who needs to be trained on it, even if it's just a little bit. And that's the sort of thing that you can't study for. Like, don't go out and get a second master's degree because you want to be an architecture archivist. That's not a good path to forward.
I'll I agree with both of those points, and I'll say too that and this applies to any position, right? So I do want to be clear, it's not specific to this industry, but anyone who's able to articulate their value add as best as possible. And I know that sounds kind of lofty, but like if you like read the job description and see what they're looking for, and you then think about your own experiences, the classes you've taken, internships you've had, and come prepared with maybe a couple examples of, and you don't know what will be asked of you, but maybe a couple examples that can maybe articulate again, like some of the things that they're looking for in this role, and just be ready, right? Because, you know, 9 times out of 10, the questions that they're asking you in an interview, it should be tied to the responsibilities in the job description. That's what we've trained our hiring managers to do, right? And so, um, you know, how we literally do it is we actually prepare our candidates. If you're ever asked something called a behavioral interview question, so if someone asks you like, tell me about a time when you did X, so like they're basically asking you to pull from a past work experience or a classroom experience to answer a question, and we tell our candidates. You want to answer that question in something called the STAR format. So you set up the situation, you then explain the task that is given to you or that you recognize you have to do. Then you articulate the action. So it's an acronym, right? The action, and then what was the result of it? And the reason why I'm giving you this framework is because when you're asked that type of question and you frame it in that sort of answer, it makes it much more clearer to the person listening to you whether you can or cannot do what they're looking for in that role because you've clearly articulated, right? Like a specific example to speak to that question. And so it really comes down to how you can articulate your past experiences in the interview, right? I would say even one step beyond that is like hiring managers really and our library kind of leaders here at NYPL really love when people ask very, I would say like just like thorough and deep questions about the position, about what it would look like for you to be in that role, about what the team looks like, about what are the challenges, what are some strengths of someone you want in this role? Like what do you want someone to do within the first 30 days? Because it showcases that you're seeing yourself in that position and you want to know what are the kind of the top 3 things I need to be doing right off the bat, and you're articulating to them again, a value add is that like you're seeing yourself in this role, and I want to know how I set myself up for success to be the best I can possibly be in this position. That is very different than asking a question of like, yeah, what do you like about the library? Which again, it's not a bad question. No question is bad, but if you only have limited time with someone who is hiring for a position, asking really thoughtful questions shows them a lot about how you are thinking about this role and how you're thinking about potentially stepping into that position too.
And I'll also say sometimes there's not a whole lot that differentiates those who don't get the job from those who do, right? Particularly in academic library positions, or at least my experience. I don't know, maybe it's true of all of these, right? There's a lot of competition by like if you make it to the group that we've said is qualified and that is sort of in the top tier that we're considering, there's not a whole lot like of differentiation between individuals necessarily in terms of like if I just did this one thing I would have been at the top of the stack. Like there's not a lot that you can do to control that. You can have great materials, you can have great experiences, you can approach this well, and sometimes it's just kind of the nature of the committee that's reading it about, it might be there's something in your CV that like sparks interest based on some other thing that you have that's not in the ad that you have no control over. I think the best you can do is like try to approach the position and to kind of prepare with these great questions and approach it as positively you can, and then keep trying, because there really is just there are a lot of people looking for those jobs, and there's a lot of competition, but it's not necessarily always in your control. I guess I'm trying to be reassuring about the job process because like, yeah, you can do everything right. And it's probably still gonna take time sometimes.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. So we're going to shift sort of into like your own experiences, and I want to make sure I leave time for Q&A from everyone who's joined us. So I'll just do this one question, and then everyone else can brainstorm what else they would want like to ask. But I know we've heard things such as going to conferences and doing interview practice or resume review, or I know Michelle, you were mentioning, oh, I didn't realize I would have to be able to do this budget. What are some of the experiences that maybe are unorthodox or out of the box that sort of helped you out the most, or you would wish you had early on in your various careers that sort of helped you and put you into like a position for success?
I
So
wish
I'll,
I, oh, sorry, go ahead.
oh no,
Go
please go
ahead.
ahead, Michelle.
I was just gonna say, I wish I paid more attention to that class about Excel and how to do the string queries. I really wish I paid more attention. Excel is, I think you guys on the library side use it for everything too. Know the basic stuff. But but actually, archives are kind of weird. It's sort of the experience that you get while you're a student really feeds into the job that you're going to get once you're out of school. So and I think I may be actually answering questions further on this list, but internships are really important when you're when you're thinking about going archives. They get you the professional experience that you need to get the jobs because everything you do once you get accepted into school counts as professional experience on the archive side. So if you're a volunteer someplace, that still counts as professional experience. If you're an intern, absolutely counts. Getting a wide breadth of experiences before you start looking for your forever home is a really good way to sort of help you stand out because you're going to have a lot more skills and a lot more experiences to draw from. And I'm going to stop there so everyone else gets a
Yeah, I think look again that sort of those experiences, some of the things that helped me, I had a great internship at it was at Columbia University Libraries in collection development. The person who was my intern supervisor is now at Rutgers Libraries. We're still in touch every couple of years. But like I got to do some cool things and I was able to say like, oh, I reviewed books for this program. Like they gave me a few distinct things and I was able to say like, here's something I did. So now when I have interns, I'm, always like conscious of what's something I can give them that would go essentially in their portfolio. So we've had interns build modules for our asynchronous information literacy tutorial, or we have them build libguides, or we have them design a lesson plan or something, I'm more on the public services side. So that was really helpful to me, but also some of my Rutgers class assignments, I kind of looked at those as ways to ask those better questions that Kelly was talking about. So, in Marie Radford's management class, I, had to do a case study. And I then, was like, okay, well, in my course, when I was out at interviews, my coursework, I saw this thing. How does that look on the ground here? So even, thinking about, as Michelle said, like those experiences you have that set you up to be that professional, you've already got pieces of them. So those were actually really helpful for me in terms of, particularly as someone who was changing careers, at showing the folks I was interviewing with that I could kind of translate other academic experience to library land.
Sorry, I was chatting it up in the chat, but you asked like what experiences, right? I will say like my background is not in the library sciences, and so I do have a slightly different background, but I would say teaching. I mean, I think that no matter what age range you teach or what age group you teach and what you teach, the skill sets you learn from being in front of people, right? Whether it be children or adults, those skills are incredibly transferable to anything you do in your life. And so, if you have any sort of kind of like, um, teaching assistant experience or part-time experience or subbing experience, like that stuff goes a long way. It really showcases your ability to communicate, to project plan, to many times use data to inform your decisions, right? A lot of those things I think are really transferable skills and definitely helped me out a lot to get to where I am today. I still say that my first year of teaching 10-year-olds math and science, it's definitely uh, the hardest like work year of my life. Like nothing will ever compare to that. And so I think it was a really good threshold for me to start with. Then I'm like, after that, I'm like, I can handle anything. So that really was transformative for me.
I just wanted to mention we don't have at this point many teaching positions in the library in Rutgers libraries, but I think if you are interested, if there is a librarian that does work that interests you, I think any of us would be more than happy to have you do a project. I am very conscious of giving, like Erin mentioned, opportunities to students that they can add another line in their CV about what they did. It can be a publication, conference presentation, a project, something that can enrich their resume. So whether, unfortunately, I don't think there are many paid positions in the libraries now, but I think the opportunities are there because that's what we do every day. So don't be shy, and then just contact us, and something might come out of it.
I do, we have some other questions that we can get to, but I do want to
Mhm.
be mindful of audience questions that were not, something that I just came up with. So if folks, if you want to pop them in the chat, I know we've had some going on in the chat, but if you wanted to raise your hand or come off mute, I will give in a minute. Otherwise, I will shift back to my other questions.
I want to make a comment if that's okay. Um, for those of you who may be disabled, um, ask yourself if you want to disclose and when you want to do so. Those of us who have slightly invisible disabilities, I mean, now that I have a cochlear implant, you can sort of see that I'm deaf, but before that, you really couldn't tell. Sometimes I didn't tell people until further in the interview process. I hate to say it, but unfortunately, there is a lot of unconscious bias that does come around disability. So I do think it's important that you ask yourself, do I feel comfortable disclosing, and how do I think this organization is going to react to that? And do I feel comfortable working here because of that?
Right. Right.
When we're in the interview process, we're interviewing you as potential employees, but you're interviewing us as potential employers. You have to like us too. Do your research. What's the diversity like? What's the accessibility like? Ask these questions before you go into the interviews. And make sure that you feel comfortable with how you think people are going to respond and your own level of comfort.
With that said, um, so as someone with hidden disabilities myself, I was just wondering, what about accommodations? When should we go for those? Because I feel like on the application you could disclose, but accommodations are a bit more finicky.
If you need the accommodation in order to fully participate in the interview, you need to ask for it. So that's things like, will you turn the captions on Zoom? Most people remember to, but with Zoom, they don't happen automatically. Someone who's doing the interview has to do that. If you need the questions ahead of time, you need to be able to ask these things. So again, it's sort of your level of comfort and how comfortable you are with disclosing and how comfortable you feel with the follow-up questions that may happen.
Mhm.
Technically, they're not supposed to ask you why you need these things, but they may ask anyway. Do you feel comfortable? How comfortable you feel with, how far you're going to disclose. I can it to if I was coming in for an in-person interview and I was in a wheelchair, everybody would sort of need to know right away. Do I feel that same way about my hearing loss, about my ADHD? You have to sort of ask yourself how important is it for you to successfully do that interview?
I'll also say,
Thank you.
you know, So one thing we tried to do, and I recognize imperfectly and still incompletely at our libraries, that a number of us enrolled in the Library Juice Academy certificate on diversity, equity, and inclusion in libraries, and we've really tried to think about that in terms of our hiring process. But we still have gaps and things that we've missed. So even I hadn't thought about turning on captions, but this is something I will do now, right? We started doing things like sending out questions ahead or sending out a really detailed explanation of the interview process, in part because someone pointed it out to us. So it's also, I would also say, outside of the context of the specific interview, the more spaces that you can bring this up as examples of what people need to be fully supported and successful, the more receptive folks are going to try and do them so that they just become universal design.
I see Danny has their hand raised. Danny, feel free to go ahead.
Yeah, hi. As someone who, it's my first semester as a library and information science student, and as someone who's exploring which field to pursue post-grad, I'm really torn between public and academic, but also I have a very specific um, like passion or interest in archives, but within the Puerto Rican diaspora and Puerto Rican culture because I'm half Puerto Rican. So I'm just wondering if you have any advice for someone who's still exploring that. I am networking. I am trying to get as plugged in as possible, but what else is there while I'm in, taking courses? What can I do to really prepare myself for working in the library full time?
On the archive side, volunteering, internships, getting that practical experience. I'm not sure how it works on the library side. But email me off this list and we will chat more about archives.
Okay, thanks.
And I'll say at this point, you don't necessarily need to decide between academic and public. So we, my library, like, Michelle talked about the importance of the reference interview, and I was like nodding nonstop, right? If you've done reference in any setting, I'm going to be interested in that. If you've done, cataloging in any setting, like there are aspects of librarianship that translate across the different sort of sectors of librarianship. So you're not essentially like entering one path and not going to be able to get back to it. So I'd say try a variety of those things and see what resonates for you. It will all be useful experience. And you can even ask, if you're not ready to not at the point that you can do an internship, ask for informational interviews or ask to job shadow or go to different panels at NJLA, some that are focused more on public libraries, or go to the New Jersey Academic Librarians Conference and see what they're talking about and see, just sort of see what resonates for you.
I think
Yeah, I agree. I think just contacting someone that you became your cross path would be just one way to start with. And if you can, you could contact I would imagine anyone on this panel or any of the librarians that you are familiar with, and they would be very happy to talk to you about their path and also possibilities in the profession. So don't be shy.
I think one thing I'll say too, Danny, and this isn't like clear advice on what you should do right at this moment to help you decide or prepare, but what I can tell you from like having a lens of not the academic side of things, but I would say our research libraries are similar, though it's still kind of public facing. It's, you're working with researchers mainly, not patrons, right? And so seeing kind of the activity of interest for the research side of things versus the public service kind of circulating branch side of things versus our collections, right? Transparently, it is much more competitive to try to become a research librarian in our research libraries. And that's not me trying to discourage you. That's just me being really open and honest about if you want to take that path, you are competing against a lot of people who are looking to do that specific type of work. Whereas I will say, we have shy of 90 circulating branch libraries across the Bronx, Manhattan, and Staten Island. A plug, right? But and we have many kind of young adult, children's librarians across all of those branches that we're always hiring for. And some locations can be a little bit more competitive than others, but it is not nearly as competitive as our research libraries or some of our collections positions. And so, I don't say that ever to discourage people. We always want you to continue applying. Sometimes, like, you apply to 5 or 6 roles and you interview for a couple, and it just happens that you got beat out by an internal candidate or whatever it might be. We always want you to keep applying, but I always want to give context to those in this field for you to truly understand that, like, it is competitive in certain types of work, more competitive in certain types of work than others. So just keep that in mind as well.
So I have a question for Kelly. Kelly, so NYPL is such a huge organization. Do internal candidates have preference to external
Yeah,
candidates
that's a
if the
great question.
vacancy,
It's a
if the
great question.
vacancy?
Um, Yes and no. Right. It's not a completely black and white answer. What I will
Okay.
say is that it really is dependent what the hiring manager is looking for and what the need is on that team.
Mhm.
So, for example, there are some teams that are much leaner and they need someone who already has kind of the lay of the land, the understanding of the nuances of NYPL to step into a position. And they many times will take someone, internal because they don't have to train them up on that kind of stuff
Right, right.
versus someone external. But I would say, if you have the experience that someone is looking for here, they will always give you the opportunity to at least interview, and then that is then your opportunity to showcase your stuff there. So it really is all dependent.
Mhm. Yeah, I had recently someone who worked for me. She's still in school, and she worked part-time for a county library. And then they were first looking, there was an opening for a full-time position, a staff full-time position, that upon graduation would be upgraded into a professional position. And she ended up getting that position. So when she graduates in May, she'll have a full-time librarian position, which is great. But she was telling me that they give full preference to an internal candidate. So that's something that I never thought about it, but I
I think
thought
it's all dependent, yeah,
yeah,
on
it
certain.
depends on the hiring party, institutions, and the circumstance.
Sometimes we only post jobs internally first, and then we open it up
Oh,
external.
so I see. I see.
Sometimes that does happen. Mhm.
So we are approaching the end of our event. So I just wanted to say, to be mindful of all of our speakers' time. If you have further questions that didn't get answered, some of us have dropped contact information in the chat, but you are always welcome to connect with the various student groups, and we can put you in touch with speakers with their permission, of course. And so, just thank you, everyone. Thank you to Michelle. Thank you, Erin. Thank you, Kaio. Thank you, Kelly, for all joining us tonight. LISSA has our next event is actually taking place on campus in person, which is really exciting for us. We haven't done that in a while. That will be on March 24th. And it's really just going to be a very casual, come hang out, chat, get to know each other. There will be either coffee, hot chocolate, some sort of refreshment being served. And that's at, was it 5 or 6, Nathaniel? I can't remember. Like I should have written that down. But
It's at 5.
5, thank you. And then we have SCARLA that has an upcoming event, Academic Librarian Hiring Process, which sounds like very relevant for a few folks in this room. That's on March 11th at 6 p.m. And so we've got some people very helpfully. Thank you, everyone, dropping stuff in the chat. I appreciate you all as I try to rattle through all of this in the last minute. But I'm just very grateful to everyone who joined us tonight, both with their expert advice on the panel, but also for our students who are coming together in the community to learn from each other and support each other. So thank you all for coming.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask what your LinkedIn contact info is. Thank you.
You could just you can look me up on LinkedIn, just my first
Okay.
name. I
Oh,
think
okay.
people.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and
All right.
Ryan, feel free to reach out to us on to Lissa and any of those links in the chat
Oh,
because we
okay.
could always
Thank you.
connect
Thank
you
you.
that way too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. And similarly, I'm happy to answer or direct folks to someone else in my library who might, if it's someone better to answer the question. Something we don't have like set internships at TCNJ that we advertise. But we have, when we are approached by students doing for credit internships or internships as part of their studies, we try to work with them as much as possible. So if folks are interested, reach out to us at TCNJ, and I'd love to see what we can do. So, right. Thanks for having me.
Thank
Good night,
you.
everyone. Bye.
Yeah, have a good
Thank you.
night. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.